Welcome to JHart Modelworks. In this video, we're finally going to finish up the Aoshima 68 MGB. Welcome to my workbench. Let's get started. As usual, the first thing we want to do is cut our parts off the sprue, get them sanded and cleaned up, and assemble anything that we need to get assembled before we paint, such as the rearview mirror assembly. Unfortunately, we will end up breaking this later. A question I see asked a lot in the Facebook groups, especially by new builders, is what glue should I be using? Personally, I like to use a liquid cement like Tamiya Extra Thin for anything that isn't painted yet, like engine assemblies or something like this mirror assembly. And for painted parts, I like to use CA or super glue. The kit comes with window masks, which is really nice, and they do fit pretty well. However, window masks are one of those things where you either get it right the first time or you spend like 10 times trying to get these to sit right. And by the time you're done, the edges don't really stick down, which is pretty much what we had here. Luckily, I didn't get any bleed through, so it all ended up being good. And we also want to make sure we get the side masks in as well, as the whole front windshield is one piece. We're going to go ahead and detack some Tamiya tape, just stick it down on our skin and pull it back up. That's going to remove some of the stickiness from it. And I like to go in and mask off the back just in case there's any kind of overspray. I don't want to get any paint on the back side of the clear parts. Next, we do have quite a bit of work we need to do to the tonneau cover. I'm going to go and cut it off the sprue and then trim up these little nib points. And because this is an odd shape, I'm going to use a sponge sander from Display to get in there and clean those up. Our next order of business is going to get in here and clean up this seam line that runs right down the center of the part. Once again, we're going to go ahead and use sponge sanders, and we really want to make sure we get into all those little nooks and crannies to make sure that we get the seam out everywhere so it doesn't stick up through our paint. The tonneau cover has some snaps that hold it in place, and these are represented by these little lumps on the part. Now we're going to replace these later with some much nicer detail, so we need to go ahead and remove these now. But first, we're going to go ahead and mark each one of them with a permanent marker. Next, we're going to take our dead center tool that we got from the Scale Pro Shop, and we're going to use this to form a pilot hole as close as we can to the center of each one of these little bumps. We can then use a pen vise to drill a 0.5 millimeter hole in the top of each one of the snaps. Once we have all of our holes drilled, we can then use our sanders to go ahead and sand off the existing snap detail. There's a lot of chrome on this kit, and in my opinion, kit chrome is almost always too shiny. So we've taken all the chrome parts and stripped them in some cheap bleach, and now we're going to respray them with some Duralumin Chrome. Now the first step in this process is we're going to put down 2 coats of Mr. Surfacer 1500 black primer. We cut the primer 50-50 with Mr. Leveling Thinner. I have no issues with this primer. Every time I spray it, it comes out flawless every time, so it's going to give us a really good black base. I like to give the primer about 30 minutes to an hour to cure, and then we're going to hit it with 2 coats of Mr. Color GX112 UV Cut Gloss Clear. You can also use GX100. The only difference between the two is that the GX112 has a UV blocking agent to prevent the clear from turning yellow over time. We're spraying chrome over it, so it's not going to yellow, and it's not really going to make any difference anyhow. Honestly, you can use any clear you want as long as you get a really high gloss finish. Alright, now we're on our second coat of clear. I always do at least 2 coats of the clear. 1 coat just does not get it shiny enough. You want the black to be almost mirror reflective. The more reflective your black base is, the better your chrome is going to turn out. Alright guys, this is the magic juice. This is Duralumin's Tough Chrome. I saw it on Barbados Rex's channel. It looked awesome, so I gave it a shot, and it is. It's half the price of Alclad with the same, if not better results, and it stands up to handling very well without even clear coating. You can only get it on Digital Armory's Etsy page. I'll have a link in the description. Now the way I'm spraying this is I don't cut my air pressure way down to 10 or less like you do with Alclad. Instead, I'm at 20 psi, but I give it the very lightest pullback on the trigger so that it releases a very light mist of paint that I build up. Alright, it is almost time to make the body to the chassis, but before we can do that, we need to get these mirrors installed because I want to glue the mirrors from the inside. Now, if you remember, previously we drilled a hole in the base, we installed a metal pin in the bottom of our mirrors. We're just going to slide that through the hole in the body, and now we're just going to add a little bit of CA glue to the inside, set it where we want it, and let it sit and dry. Instead of using the kit mirrors, I am using my own bullet style mirrors that I 3D modeled. The 3D printer file for these is available on my Colts 3D page, which is in the description. So if you have your own 3D printer, you can print them for any build you want. I think they look really good on things like classic exotics. Now, before mating the body to the chassis, Aoshima wants you to fully assemble everything to the body, front and back. In my opinion, this is just asking for small parts like door handles to get broken off while you're trying to put the body on. Instead, we're going to get the body on the chassis first, and we're going to start by ignoring the instructions again and not gluing the interior to the chassis, but instead just sliding it into place inside the body. Once the interior tub is in place, there are 2 retaining notches inside the back of the body. The rear of the chassis needs to slide into these notches. We can then pull the sides out a little bit to help slide the chassis into the body. Then when we get it close, we'll use our tweezers to just pry the front end under this lip. And then with just a little more tugging and wiggling on the sides, everything should slide snugly into place. The body is on, and the next thing we're going to do is finish up the tonneau cover. So we're going to use some of these Top Studio rivets. We're going to use a 1.0 millimeter for the center snap, and then we're going to use these 0.8s to go around the edges. And this is a tip shown to me by Chris over at CD Scale Models. You can use Tamiya tape. In fact, I will later. For this one, I'm using some double-sided sticky tape. We're just going to wrap it around the end of a toothpick here, and then we're going to get some of these rivets out. Now, I like to use a magnet. They're a little easier to control when they're on a magnet. We're going to pull one of the rivets off the magnet, and we're going to stick the head side to the sticky tape. We can then take the post of the rivet and dip it in the Elmer's glue, and then just use the toothpick to set the rivet straight into the hole we drilled earlier. Now, it may take a couple of attempts to do this, but I swear this is so much easier than trying to manage these with a pair of tweezers. The tweezers, if you pinch too hard, they ping off into space. If you don't pinch hard enough, the rivet falls out. It's a constant pain. This is so much simpler. Once you have your rivets set, you can just clean any excess glue off with a wet cotton bud and then just let it set and dry. To install the cover, I wiggled it in between the sides of the interior, which is a snug fit. I then tilted it forward and put some CA glue under it just a little so it doesn't squish out onto the body, and then press it down into place. Now we're going to start assembling everything on the rear end. And I'm sorry, but once again I'm zoomed in with the camera. We're starting with the trunk latch, which I lost the original kit part, so you guessed it, I 3D modeled a new one. Then I found the original, but by then I already had the new one painted, and in my opinion mine looks nicer. Next, we're going to glue on the gas cap, which we're using some Bob Smith Super Gold Plus. We're just going to apply a little bit of glue here, and then, way out of camera again, we're going to go ahead and stick the gas cap on there. The taillights are a 2-part assembly. There's a chrome back and trim piece with a couple of holes. We're just going to add a little bit of glue in there, and then we're going to glue the clear red part in over it. Then we're going to add a little bit of CA glue to the insides of these openings, just at the top and the bottom, and then there's 2 locating pins on the back of the chrome part that slide it into place. Now what you can't see, because I'm off screen again, is I'm putting a little bit of glue on 2 holes where the bumper goes in. The bumper has 2 posts on it, and the fit is absolutely perfect. Next we have our reverse lights, and I have painted the back with some Vallejo silver. That way it'll have a nice reflective look to them, and we won't see the body color blue through the clear glass. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of CA glue to the silver on the backs. Then we're going to carefully set these in the corner right above the bumper. There's actually supposed to be some locating points, but I kind of sanded them clean during the body prep. Back during the chassis video, we modified the muffler to accept a new exhaust tip, and now we're going to make that tip. We're starting with some aluminum rod, and we're making a mark for where we want the tip to end. Then we're just going to cut it using a hobby knife and just rolling it back and forth until it cuts through. I'm putting some tape on one end because we're going to go ahead and chuck this into a drill and then use some metal files to clean off any burrs and clean up the inside of the tip. We're also going to use a flat file to clean off any burrs on the outside from the cutting as well. Next, we're going to wet sand it with some micro mesh. I'm using 6000, 8000, and 12,000 grit. And then using some more CA glue, we're going to just get the glue on the inside of the muffler, and then we can slide our tip into place. Now this kit has a lot of tiny delicate chrome parts, and I snapped one of the door handles in half. So you guessed it, 3D modeled and 3D printed new door handles. Now I have made a 3D print file available for sale on my cults page. I will put a link in the description to the file for these. We're just going to put a little CA glue on the front and back on the back side, and we're going to use our tweezers to just carefully set these into place, trying not to get any glue on the body. Now for our door locks, we're using Top Studio rivets again. This time we're using the 1.2 millimeter, and it's the exact same process. We're going to put down some Elmer's glue. This time I used some Tamiya tape instead of double-sided tape, but it works the same way. Just flip it over about halfway through and wrap it around on itself so you get a sticky outside. Then we'll stick the head end to the tape so that it stands straight out. We'll dip the pin end into the Elmer's glue and then just press it into place with our toothpick. Once it's in place, we'll just clean off any excess Elmer's glue with the wet cotton bud. Chris turned me on to these. He was watching Mr. Lynn's channel. He got me watching Mr. Lynn's channel. These really do make really good door locks. Moving on to the front end, we're placing a tiny bit of glue to the inside of the front grill space, and then we'll carefully press the grill into place. Next, we're going to assemble the headlights, and I find that a ball of blue tack pressed down into a flat patty is a great way to hold the round headlamp buckets while gluing in the lenses. I'm going to use Bondic for this, and it may look like I'm putting in a lot, but really I'm putting in a tiny drop on each side, and then using the tip to spread it around the inside lip of the housing. I'm not squeezing glue all the way around. Then using another tiny bit of blue tack rolled into a point, we can set our lenses into place and then cure them with the UV light. Now it says to do about 4 seconds. I like to do 10 just to make sure it's good and cured. Once assembled, we'll put some CA glue on the inside edges of the headlight openings, and we'll use the blue tack to press the headlights into place. Just like the rear bumper, the front end has 2 holes for the bumper to go into. We're going to put a little bit of glue into each one of these holes, and then just press in the bumper. These tiny little clear parts are the front turn signals. And yeah, I lost one. So yeah, I 3D modeled and printed new turn signals. But there's a trim that goes around the edge that's supposed to be chrome, so I modeled mine with the trim and the back separate from the lenses, so I could easily paint the chrome around the trim and make it easier to mask off the orange sections of the lenses. And we're just going to use some CA glue to glue these lenses to the back. And we don't have very long. We need to go ahead and fiddle with this a little bit to get it all squared and straight. But in the end, I think they turned out really good. And that just looks like a lot of glue. It's actually mostly dried on glue. We're really using a tiny bit of glue to glue these turn signals onto the front of the body. On the front of the body, right above the bumper, there's some slight little indents, and that marks where these need to go. The rear view mirror. Sadly, there's supposed to be a chrome post that goes all the way down to the dashboard. Unfortunately, I broke it in half. This isn't really something that's large enough to 3D print. I don't think the post would really make it through the printing process. So instead, I'm going to go ahead and just cut the post off near the bottom and just glue it onto the windshield. Next, we're going to use some Bob Smith Super Gold Plus. We're going to put it along this little lip between the dashboard and the body, and then we can set our windshield into place. Next, we're going to put in a couple of drops of CA glue in this hole, and then we're going to press in the engine bay vent. Now, if you don't press this in properly and get it to snap into place, it's going to sit wrong. And then it's onto the windshield wipers, which are honestly kind of terrible. There is no post for them, even though there's holes for a post. So the little bit of glue you can get on the end ends up getting on the body, and they don't really want to sit right. There really should have been posts for these. Now the last pieces for the front end assembly are these crazy small little turn signal markers for the front end. They're like half the size of a grain of frickin' rice. They need to be painted clear orange, and then you need to get a little bit of Vallejo silver on the back side to make them nice and reflective. Then put just a tiny drop of CA glue on them, and then very carefully set them into place with some non-slip tweezers. Time for the wheels and tires. This is a cool little jig for mounting your tires up into a cordless drill so that you can sand the tread pattern on them and give them a nice worn appearance. It's a couple of mushroom-shaped drawer pulls from Hobby Lobby, a bolt, 2 washers, and a nut. But as you can see, you can just chuck your tire up in there, then take a sander and go to town on the tread. If you've got like one of those seams in the center, this will help you take it out really quick. Otherwise, you're just sanding it to give a nice worn appearance for the tread. Now we'll just slide the tire over the kit wheel. And we'll put a little bit of CA glue in the center, and then we can set the knockoff into place with a pair of tweezers. Now we'll just wiggle them into place so that the post fits firmly into the polycaps that are inside the brakes. On the fronts, I didn't put the knockoffs on yet. I just went ahead and slid the wheels into place, and then I added the knockoffs after. No real reason for this, it's just how I happen to do them. And that right there is the final knockoff. She's now officially on the ground on all 4 wheels. The kit comes with these really nice Photo Etch badges, and this is a tip from my brother over at DFW Plastic Society, Ruben Davila, on how to paint them. You don't paint them. Instead, we're going to color them in with fine tip permanent markers, and we're not trying to be super careful about it. We're getting in the right area, but we're covering the top and the bottom. All the detail is getting covered with these permanent markers. So now that we've got them colored, we're going to set them aside and let them dry. Now Ruben uses Ronsonol lighter fluid. I don't happen to have any anymore, but I do have some 91% isopropyl alcohol and some of these really small Tamiya cotton buds. We're going to get the cotton bud wet, but not like pouring wet. We're going to dry most of it off on a paper towel, and then we're going to rub the cotton bud against the Photo Etch, just rubbing it across the top. This is going to lift all the Sharpie marker off the top edges, leaving just the marker down in the recesses. Now if you take too much off or you get down into those recesses, you can go right back over it again and then rub it back off again with another cotton bud. So now you can see we've got the black way down in those recesses, but the MG really pops. So these badges are looking good, but I'm going to take them one step further. I'm going to add some Bondic UV glue on the top of them to give them a 3D lens appearance. We're going to add just enough to give it a nice rounded dome, and then we're going to hit it with the UV light. And we're going to repeat the process on the front badge as well. I got a little bit too much, so I just wiped it off with a paper towel and then reapplied. Now this badge is kind of an odd shape, and we want to make sure we get it pushed to all the corners. Now we're just going to hit that one with the UV light as well. I really think this just takes those badges to another level. We're going to cut the badges off the fret with our Xuron Photo Etch shears, then we'll place a tiny drop of glue on the front of the grill and set our badge into place. We'll just repeat for the rear badge, and we're done. Next up, we have our registration sticker and toll tag, and this has become a ritual for all of my builds now. I set the date of the registration to the month and year I completed the build, so when I get old, like next week, I can remember when I finished a build. Since we're using a white decal paper, we need to cut right up to the edge of the decal so we don't have any white overhang. We'll then dip the decal into the hot water, apply some microset, and then I just set the decal on the windshield and use my brush or my tweezers to scoot it off the paper and set it in place. Once we have it where we want it, we're going to dab off the excess microset and then gently roll the cotton bud over the decal to make it nice and flat and squeeze out any remaining solution. Then we're going to repeat this process for the toll tag. I was going to place the toll tag in the corner above the registration, but then I changed my mind and moved it to the traditional area under the mirror. As long as the decal isn't dry yet, you can usually get away with a quick change like this on a smooth, flat surface like a windshield. The finishing touch for the build is the license plates. Part of me thinks I should have plated this car as lost parts, but in tribute to Vic, who sent the kit to me, I went with Vic 68MG. Now, I like to use actual aluminum for the plates, and the sides of a soda can are a great way to get some free material. I went ahead and just cut 2 of these off the decal sheet at once and laid them on a nice flat part of the aluminum. Again, using microset, we're going to set them and roll the cotton bud over them to get any of the excess moisture out from under them and get them nice and smooth. Once the decals have set, we can cut them off individually, and I'm using the wrong tool for this. I have Xuron Photo Etch shears that are sharper and would have made this a lot easier and cleaner. If you don't have them, then a hobby knife or scissors will work fine, but cutting aluminum dulls a hobby blade pretty quick, and the scissors don't cut as clean in my opinion. If you're gonna spend the money for tools, you should use the tools. Ranting aside, while cutting these out, we want to cut right up to the plate design, and we also want to remember to notch the corners, as most of the plates have rounded corners. Now it finally dawns on me that I have these and I should actually use them to clean up the edges. We have our plates, but they aren't quite ready to go on yet. I'm going to add some of these 0.03 inch Protect bolt heads to the plates. I like to do this over a sheet of white paper as the tiny bolt heads are easier to see on it. Remember the mechanical pencil we use for detail painting in the interior? It makes a great CA glue applicator too. Just don't get any glue on the tip of the pencil. Run out some lead, dip it into the CA glue, then you can place a tiny drop on the plates where we want the bolts. We'll then use a toothpick, moisten with a little bit of saliva to pick up our Photo Etch bolts, and place them on the glue spots. The saliva has just enough surface tension to pick up these tiny little metal specks, but it releases them almost as soon as they touch the glue. All that's left is to glue the plates onto the license plinths and glue them onto the car. Once again, we're going to take our blob of blue tack that's just rolled into a point, and we're going to use it to pick up these plates and just carefully set them into our glue. We'll place a little bit of CA glue on the back of the mounting brackets, and then gently press them in once we've got them nice and centered. We don't want to smear these around too much. We don't want to end up smearing glue everywhere. And of course, the very last part has to be out of camera frame. And with that, the build is complete. Alright guys, here's the final result. Once again, I'm quite happy with how she turned out. I'd like to take one more opportunity to thank Vic from Vic's Miniatures for this awesome kit. It was a fantastic kit to build. If you're into these old MGs, I definitely recommend it. And I'd like to thank Sean again from the Scale Model Car Guy channel for the left-hand drive dashboard. I'll have a link to both of them in the description below. Please check them out. The splash paints Aston Martin Ming Blue I feel is a very fitting color choice. I thought about going with a dark non-metallic blue, which I think would have been really classy too, but I'm really glad I went with this one. And the Duralumin Chrome was done a fantastic job on all the bright work. Unfortunately, we can't really see as well into the engine bay as I thought, but you can get a little glimpse of the radiator in there. The interior came out really nice, and I love how the 3D printed seats fit the build. When I use or make 3D printed parts, my goal is for it to look very natural to the build, and I think I pulled that off with these seats here. We have our chassis and suspension work, which I think came out great, especially for this being a curbside kit. And surprisingly, for an area that's not really going to be seen, I really think this is where the most of the scratch built detail went. As you can see by the registration sticker, we do have our first finished build of 2023. So with this one wrapped up, we're going to get back to work on the Audi R8. I'm going to have to make my own window masks to wrap that up. So there should hopefully be an update on that soon. And after that, I think we may have another update style build with the Revell Viper SRT10. As always guys, thanks for hanging out with me and building with me, and I'll catch you on the next one. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. Also feel free to leave comments, feedback, critique, or anything else in the comment section below. I enjoy interacting with all my viewers in the comment section and try to reply to all the comments I receive. If you want to catch future videos, please consider subscribing to my channel and make sure you click the bell notification icon so you can be notified when I upload new videos. As always, thank you for watching, keep modeling, and have a great day.